Hello and welcome to Rick's RC Flying Channel. This is part 2 of episode 21 of the Sweet and Low build. In this episode, we're going to take a look at fabricating the instrument panel. So let's get started. Now, just before we dig in right into the instrument panel, I thought I'd take a quick moment to mention of a magazine that actually contributes a lot to our hobby, and that's Model Airplane News. Every edition is just full of tips and how-tos and great articles on builds that modelers have done and even new products. So I, would say it's worthwhile checking out. So let's get started with our instrument panel. So the first step is we need to make the instrument panel backing and the face. And I like using often enough 1/32 plywood. It's very thin, it's very light, and you can use it for the backing and particularly for the face of the instrument panel. And I like it because it has a fine grain, very easy to finish, particularly if you're kind of looking for more of a metal look. However, you can use all kinds of different materials. I mean, even balsa wood. You can even cover it with a film if you so desire. Another type of face that I use on instrument panels is using veneers. There's many different types to choose from depending on the look you're after. Once you cut out the panels, the back panel and the front panel, you can then position and cut out the instrument holes. Now there's a variety of ways to accomplish cutting out these holes, everything from appropriate drill bits. I've even at one point made my own cutting tools. I'll actually provide a video in the description on that for those that are handy in fabricating something like that. Now, in this particular project, I did use a laser to cut out the holes. Now, if you manually cut out the holes, then you would take the front panel and simply inscribe the position of those holes on the back panel so you know where to glue the instruments. Now in my case, the laser inscribed it on the back panel. Now the names on the instrument panel face that you see there, such as primer, fuel pump, left mag, right, and so forth. Now I laser engraved them in. There are instrument panels that have that type of placards and naming of switches, but of course you can print out various labels for your switches. You can do it on, different varieties of paper to add to its realistic effect. So now I'm just taking the 3D printed bezels and just cleaning them up a bit. Now, if you don't have a laser printer, that's not necessarily a problem because I've used brass tubing, aluminum tubing, plastic tubing, and there's all kinds of things probably lying around your shop that can be used in the fabrication of a cockpit or instrument panel. Now you will notice I have my instruments already cut out, and you can resource instruments through, pictures from aviation magazines, or you can online. There's an endless supply of aviation photos of instrument panels and cockpits, and also you can search online for retailers that sell instruments for all different kinds of aircraft, whether it's vintage to modern fighters, and they come in different sizes. Now I printed my instruments on glossy photo paper. So now I'm preparing to glue the instruments on the back panel, which already have the position for where they are to be located. So I'm just securing a few pieces to this project that I don't want moving around. And when it comes to the glue, whatever glue you do decide to use, make sure that it gives you enough time to orientate and position the instruments. Sometimes you may have to rotate them slightly or just realign them. So you don't want a glue that dries too fast. Now when you start to glue the instruments on the back panel, you don't need very much glue, and I suggest just applying it in the center section because you really don't want glue squeezing out the sides. Now do make sure you do your homework with regard to where the instruments are positioned. Now, it really depends on the type of airplane you're doing, whether it's vintage, or as time goes on, the more modern airplanes got, they started following some set patterns on the location of the instruments. A very typical expression you hear is called a six-pack. It's a predefined positioning of instruments to help the pilot scan the instrument panel. And so, if you're following a particular scale project, or even if it's standoff scale, whatever model you choose, uh, try to put the instruments according to the airplane that you're building. Once you have your instruments on the back panel, take your front panel, place it on top, just to double check that the instruments are orientated properly. You may have to rotate them slightly or maybe even align them. You want to make sure you've got a nice perfect fit. Once that's done, then you can glue the front face onto the back panel. So now we're going to glue the bezels into place. And what I have here, of course, is the fact that the holes are laser cut and I 3D printed the bezels. Um, Everything is matched in such a way that you do get literally a perfect fit, which really enhances the final look of the instrument panel. Now, I, of course, am using bezels, which completes the instrument installation. However, there are airplanes and instrument panels where there's really no visible bezel per se. It's just the way the front instrument panel is designed. So even from a standoff modeling perspective, you could easily do without the bezels and just have the front panel on. Just make sure that in that instant that your instruments, are of the correct sizing so you don't see the edge of your instrument. Now again, be careful when you are applying the glue for the bezels, just to do it on the outer edge of where the actual bezel will be resting. Again, what you're trying to avoid is getting any glue on the face of the instrument. Now, one thing you can do is if you use canopy glue, which does dry clear. So that gives you a little bit of forgiveness that should you get some glue on the face of the instrument, because it dries clear, it's not readily visible. Now, depending on the type of bezels you're using, mine are beveled, which is many times the case with real bezels. So in other words, there is a top and bottom. So, if you're using those type of bezels, just make sure that when you place them in there, that they're orientated properly. You may also notice by looking at the instrument panel now that the instruments have a glare, and that is because I used glossy photo paper. So it makes it look like there's instruments that actually have a glass face. Now the instruments are typically held in aircraft with screws, and you can see them on the face of the instrument panel. Now, depending what scale you're working in, you would use the appropriate drill size, and I'm using a small hand drill here, and I'm drilling right through the front face and the back plate right through. That's why I doubled the cardboard underneath, because I'm actually drilling right through. Now the screws I got from a model railroad shop, and they come in all kinds of small sizes. They're very handy. They look great. You can get them with a Phillips head or even a common slotted head. So it just depends on the scale you're working. Now the reason that I drill right through is because the screws are going to be glued from behind. Uh, I wouldn't make any attempt to try to glue those screws on the front face because you'll just end up with a mess. So the technique I use is to glue the screws from behind. That's why we drilled right through. So when you're done putting all the screws in, you just turn it over to the back, and you can use your glue of your choice. I happen to use thin CA, and just a tiny little drop in the hole to secure the screw. So now that all the holes are drilled, I'm now taking these tiny screws and simply pushing them down in the hole. I get it in position and then with my finger just pop them in. They're not actually screwed in, they're just literally pushed into the hole. So now I'm just taking this little tool here and just making sure all the screw heads are properly seated on the instrument face, because sometimes when you're trying to push it down with your finger because the bezels are in the way, you don't quite get them all the way down. So I'm just checking to make sure they're seated properly before gluing them. So I'm just having one last look just to make sure that all the screws are properly seated and that everything looks good. You can see the reflection off the instruments, so it looks like there's a glass panel in front. So now I'm going to glue it from behind. You'll notice I'm holding the instrument panel sideways, and that's because I'm using thin CA. If you hold it flat and you use the thin CA, if you by chance use too much of the thin CA, there would be a risk of it running right through to the other side. So that's why I hold the panel sideways. Now I'm getting ready to put the switches onto the instrument panel. Now again, as I mentioned before, there are in the modeling community are retailers that do sell not only instrument faces, but even the bezels and the switches. So you can get all kinds of things from the retailers to build an instrument panel if you don't have your own resources. So with the switches here, I'm just filing the bottom of the switch just to make sure that they seat properly on the instrument panel. And then I have a few lights that I'm going to glue on as well. I'm also right now printing two knobs, one for the altimeter setting and the other for the directional gyro, which will be added later on once I complete printing them. Now keep in mind that when you install switches, they either go up or down or left or right. So make sure you orientate the switch in the correct position for its purpose. Now I 3D printed a primer knob, so I'm just preparing some silver paint for that, and just filing the bottom of it so it seats properly on the instrument panel. Well, the Sweet and Low Cockpit is coming together, And I still have the seatbelt harness to make, and buckles and shoulder harness and so forth. And made also already a windshield for the Sweet and Low. And I was going to scratch build a pilot for this particular airplane. So if you have any questions or comments, as always, I welcome them. If you like the video, please select like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.